Palantir Technologies. You've probably heard the name thrown around, right? It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. And honestly, the company's power and secrecy aren't that far off. We're talking about a tech giant that works deep in the shadows with spy agencies, military forces, and massive corporations. So what does one of the most powerful and misunderstood companies on the planet actually do? Let's dive in and find out.
Okay, so to really get what Palantir's all about, you've got to start with that name. Because it's not just some cool, catchy brand, it's basically their mission statement. And it hints at both incredible power and some pretty serious dangers.
Yep, that's right. We're talking The Lord of the Rings. A Palantir is one of those magical seeing stones that lets you peer across huge distances to see things and people far away. It's an amazing tool for insight and knowledge. But, and for anyone who knows the story, this is a big but, it can also be corrupted and used for evil. That whole duality, that tension, that's the Palantir story in a nutshell. And this quote right here from co-founder Peter Thiel just perfectly captures that tightrope they claim to be walking. The whole idea was to prevent the next major terrorist attack without turning into a total surveillance state. It's a noble goal for sure, but man, is that a tough line to walk. And whether they've actually managed to do it is the big question that follows them everywhere. So, with a mission that huge, what was the actual real-world problem they set out to solve? Well, it all boils down to one simple, massive issue: data. So, think back to the early 2000s. After 9/11, one of the most shocking discoveries was that different U.S. intelligence agencies had crucial bits of information, but they couldn't put them together. Their databases were completely walled off from each other. They were siloed. The CIA couldn't easily search the FBI's data, the NSA couldn't search the CIA's. You get the picture. There was no way to connect the dots. Palantir's big idea was to build software that could act like a master key, sitting on top of all these different messy systems and letting them finally talk to each other. Their first product, Gotham, was built for the government. Counterterrorism, intelligence, that kind of thing. But then they realized that huge corporations have the exact same problem, just with supply chains and customer data instead of terrorists. And bam, that's how Palantir Foundry was born. Now here's a really crucial point they make over and over again. Palantir is not Google, it's not Facebook. They say they don't collect or sell data. Instead, they give their clients a tool to analyze the data they already own. It's a key part of their philosophy. They don't call it artificial intelligence, they call it intelligence augmentation. The idea is that a human analyst is always in charge, making the final call. The machine finds the patterns, but the person makes the decision. So who exactly is using this incredibly powerful technology? Well, the client list is pretty wild. It's like a mix of James Bond and the Fortune 500. Looking at their business in 2024, it's almost a 50-50 split. Government work is still the biggest piece of the pie, but just barely. The commercial side is catching up incredibly fast, which just shows that the problem of making sense of massive amounts of data is absolutely universal. And when we say government clients, we are talking about the heavy hitters: the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, the Department of Defense. And it's not just in the US. They work with Britain's National Health Service and even the Ukrainian military. This software is running inside some of the most critical and high-stakes operations on the entire planet. Over on the commercial side, it's a similar story with huge names. Airbus uses it to manage aircraft manufacturing. Ferrari uses it for their racing team. No joke. And giant companies like Merck and Morgan Stanley use it to manage just immense complexity in drug development and finance. But look, when you have this kind of power and a client list that reads like that, controversy is pretty much inevitable, right? And for Palantir, there's one partnership that has drawn way more heat than any other. Let's talk about ICE. Of all their government contracts, their work with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which has been going on for over a decade, has been a constant lightning rod for protest and criticism. So what's at the heart of the issue? It's a system Palantir developed called Immigration OS. According to reports, this software lets ICE agents pull together all kinds of information from different databases to build these incredibly detailed profiles of undocumented immigrants, ultimately helping to speed up deportations. And this has led to a major, fierce debate. You have critics, like Amnesty International, who argue that Palantir is essentially building the engine for a deportation machine. But on the other side, Palantir's position has always been that their software is intended for investigating criminal activity, and that at the end of the day, the client, ICE in this case, is the one in full control of how their own data is used. They position themselves as the tool maker, not the one making the rules. You know, this quote from Encyclopedia Britannica just nails it. They call Palantir one of the most consequential and controversial firms of our time. And it's true. They're undeniably important and undeniably polarizing.
But here's the thing, all that controversy hasn't really slowed them down. And when you look at the company's valuation and its ambitions, you realize they are thinking on a scale that is just staggering.
Get this. At its peak, Palantir's market value shot past $400 billion. I mean, that is just a mind-boggling number. That's a valuation that puts you in the same league as some of the biggest, most established companies in the world. But there was always a but. Wall Street looked at that massive number, then looked at their actual revenues, and a lot of people were left scratching their heads. It led The Economist to once ask if Palantir was maybe the most overvalued firm of all time. The numbers just didn't seem to add up for some folks. So why the hype? Why the huge valuation? Well, it might have something to do with this little line, taken directly from their own IPO filing. Their goal isn't just to sell some software, it's to become the default operating system across the US. Think about that. The foundational software for how the country runs. It's an absolutely massive ambition. And that brings us right back to the central question, the one that defines Palantir. Is this software a necessary tool for a complex and often dangerous world? Something we need to connect the dots and keep people safe? Or is it the quiet, steady construction of the architecture for a future surveillance state? The tricky part is, the answer seems to depend entirely on who you ask and who's holding the seeing stone.